All right, welcome to lesson 2 in chapter 11. Again, all of chapter 11 is going to talk about biodiversity. This lesson is specifically going to talk about the threats to biodiversity. So learning goal or learning objective is that you'll be able to describe the threats to biodiversity as well as the possible solutions. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe background extinction, define mass extinction and describe the impacts humans have had on it, and then identify and describe factors that threaten biodiversity. So first, let's talk about extinction rates. So the gradual process of species becoming extinct is called background extinction. It's just happening in the background. It's just that is the natural process that's kind of expected. Stable ecosystems can be changed by the activity of other organisms, climate changes, or natural disasters. Some of these things, like climate change and the other organisms could be humans, are impacted by humans. But some of these are just natural things that are going to happen, whether we are here or not. This natural process of extinction is not what concerns scientists. This is the process of extinction that happens when a shift happens in an ecosystem, either very quickly or slowly, and a species cannot adapt, and so they eventually will go extinct. This is normal. What scientists are concerned about is the increasing rate of extinction. The current rate of extinction is 1,000 times the normal background extinction rate. Some scientists predict that 1/3 to 2/3 of all plant and animal species will become extinct during the second half of this century. Mass extinction is an event in which a large percentage of all living species become extinct in a relatively short period of time. Anthropogenic changes to the environment are changes induced by human activity. Anthro, anything that means human. So human changes to the environment. They include habitat loss, pollution, the introduction of invasive species, overexploitation, and climate change. These changes can disrupt an ecosystem and threaten the survival of some species. Again, if an ecosystem has changed so much that a species living in that ecosystem cannot adapt, then they cannot survive. So they may just go extinct in that one ecosystem. But eventually, especially if that's a widespread change, or if that species is is very specialized to that ecosystem, that may cause that species to go extinct. Humans are changing conditions on Earth faster than new traits can evolve in some species to cope with the new conditions. An evolving species may not have the natural resources that they need to survive. And natural resources are any materials and organisms that are found in the biosphere. So those species may not have enough water. They may not have the right food. They may not have the right minerals to survive. So natural resources include minerals, fossil fuels, nuclear fuels, plants, animals, soil, clean water, clean air, and solar energy. Overexploitation is another concern. So one of the factors that's increasing the current rate of extinction is overexploitation, which is also excessive use of species that have economic value. Another is habitat loss. So destruction of habitats such as clearing tropical rainforests has a direct impact on global biodiversity, especially because tropical rainforests are the most diverse ecosystems. Disruption of a habitat, such as overfishing, can start a chain reaction and affect an entire ecosystem. So we're going to show that in a graphic on the next slide, where harbor seal and sea lion populations declined during the 1970s. Killer whales had to eat more sea otters. They had to eat something. And that decline in sea otters led to an increase in sea urchins, which led to a decrease in kelp. So this is a food web, kind of. It's mostly a chain, except it's not all going directly. But whales eat these guys. These guys are also eaten by fish. The sea lions and the harbor seals eat those fish. And then killer whales eat sea lions and harbor seals, and they also eat sea otters. Sea otters eat sea urchins and kelp forests. So when sea lions and harbor seal populations went down because possibly less fish, even though harbor seals and sea lions do not directly interact with this half of this food web chain thing, they're still going to impact it, because when there's less sea lions and harbor seals, the killer whales have to eat something. And so if that food's gone, they're going to eat more sea otters. If there's no sea otters or less sea otters, there's going to be more sea urchins, which is what the sea otters are eating. Sea urchins crawl along the rock and they cut up the kelp forest. So if there's tons of sea urchins, that means that the kelp is going to go away. So the separation of an ecosystem into small pieces of land is called habitat fragmentation. And something that happens and is related to that is this edge effect. So edge effects are different environmental conditions that occur along the boundaries of an ecosystem. So this is the edge right here. So it's closer to the outside, so it's going to be a little bit more impacted by the world around it. It's usually going to be a little bit less diverse because most of the animals are going to want to be further in. When we have habitat fragmentation, so we divide this into 4 and we put a road down the middle, yes, we're only using a small percentage of that habitat because, we're just putting a road through it. It's still a lot of green space. We're cutting up the interior habitat even more because we're adding anywhere that road is touching, anywhere that something other than that habitat is touching is going to create that edge effect, which is going to have usually less species. It's more commonly impacted by pollution and external factors that can affect biodiversity. Another thing that threatens biodiversity is going to be climate change. So species have evolved to live within certain temperatures. When these temperatures increase, species that cannot adapt die. This threatens the survival of the species as well as other species that depend on it for survival. Scientists predict that climate change will threaten approximately 25% of all land species by 2050, so in the next just over 25 years. The next is going to be pollution. So pollution changes the composition of air, soil, and water. And then one issue that we see with pollution is this idea of biological magnification. And this is the increasing concentration of toxic substances in organisms as trophic levels increase in food chain or web. So some pollutants or some toxins, they are fat soluble, which means they're going to hang out in the fat cells of whatever creature has ingested it. And then when that creature gets eaten by something else, then those toxins are going to then reside in the fat cells of the creature that ate the creature. So as we go up the food chain, the concentration of that toxic substance is going to go up and up and up because they're eating more of the creatures that have, more of the organisms that have this pollutant or toxin in them. That's part of the reason that tuna have the mercury concern is because there's biological magnification happening with mercury in the oceans with the fish that the tuna are eating. All right, so acid precipitation is another concern because it occurs after sulfur and nitrogen compounds react with water and other substances in the air to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid. It removes calcium, potassium, and other nutrients from the soil, which deprives plants of these nutrients. If the plants are at risk, the entire ecosystem is at risk. Eutrophication is a big one as well, and that destroys underwater habitats for some species. We talked about this when we talked about aquatic biomes and aquatic ecosystems. But this occurs when fertilizers, animal waste, sewage, or other substances that are rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, these are huge nutrients for plants, flow into waterways, which causes extensive algae growth. All right, so this is what can happen with acid precipitation. It can damage the trees and also it seeps the nutrients out of the soil. And then here is eutrophication, just a green kind of nasty lake that, yes, there's a lot of photosynthesis happening, but the fish and other plants are not going to be able to survive with this much algae. All right, that is the end of this lesson. Please let me know if you have any questions and I'll see you in the next one.